Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate you leading us in with this, and so I will switch over and get going. Okay, I just want to start and talk about some of the things that are important as far as the two of the dashboards that we start out with the emissions inventory. We have a main dashboard that is available. This shows a summary of the current emissions inventory. You can see that while I'm working with the 2011 data, it can be done for any year. We have all the facilities. It's shown here in a summary form, so there's 4,307 facilities from the Texas inventory. We have 50,000 release points and just over 200 individual compounds reported into the inventory. We scroll down a little bit, we can see a summary by county for certain compounds that we are interested in. So we have NOx, CO, CO2, and SO2. To the right of that, we also show a selection of all the facilities in the region that are part of our inventory, so we can see them highlighted here as they're spread across the state. And then below, we have a kind of a chart and graph summary of all the emissions. You can see that we have, by highlighting, we can get real numbers. We can highlight over top of them and see the values. And if we want to eliminate a few, for example, if I want to eliminate the others, because that's the largest group after the top 9, I can see now that it brings other counties in focus, and we can look at those again. If I want to, say, eliminate, say, another one, it will shrink the graph so that we can get a better summary. Again, we can do this for not just about any compound that we pick. So we can say, I want to get rid of, say, freestone and the others. And again, we can get a nice summary. This is quite useful not only for government, but for individual enterprises that have multiple sites being managed by AQMIS. To that end, there's also a facility dashboard that I can click on. Bring up. Now this brings us down to an individual facility summary. Again, we look at the facility, where it's located, how many operating units and processes are at the facility, release points, reporting periods, total pollutants being emitted. And then if we scroll down again, we also see the map for the facility where it's located. So we have a general idea of when we're looking at a facility what's nearby. So if we're doing sensitive receptor analysis or we're doing hotspots, we get a feel for what we might need to identify. But from the inventory, it's also nice to know so you can see facilities and sources and their locales. Main contacts, classification codes, and a few other summaries. So now that we've kind of gotten through some of the dashboarding, I want to go over to the emissions inventory module and do a little more deep dive there. So let's come to the emission. Within the emissions inventory module, as it's currently configured, we have point sources, some other sources, non-stationary, so we have like on-road, non-road. We have a calculator module showing the calculators. We'll be coming back to this in a little bit. We have the storage tanks. So within the solution, we have not only the EPA's Tanks 409D model, but we also include the complete Chapter 7 from AP42, which is the analytic version of the tank calculation. So you have a choice between the two. If you want to do some reporting, for example, if you need to export and send your facility data to, say, a regulator or to the US EPA, you can do so. We have other regulatory models for doing exports, such as the CARB seeders and a few of the other supported tools. But in this configuration, I just wanted to show you the US EPA version. So let's go back up here to the point sources and talk about a few other things that we can do. So we have the facility and the source point deep dive, which has all the data, and you can slice it and dice it as we see fit. We can do a source configuration, and this will just allow us to rapidly see and add all of the individual operating units at a facility. So we can see emission units, we can see the process, and when we click on a process, we can get all the information, the SEC code and so forth, as you can see here. And we can change and edit all of this data as needed on site. That's how we would go in and configure our part of the inventory. We also have a similar thing for release points, where we can identify for a given facility. We can see all of the release points. So when we click on a release point, click like this, we can see not only the release point, but we can see which processes and details are routing their emissions to it. We can see the stack parameters. We can see where it's located on the map. So we can see here nicely. We can also switch to a satellite view if we need to. If we just want to see where the facility is located on the satellite map, that's pretty handy. We have that capability for you as well. These things do the configuration of the inventory, setting up the basics. Once we have done that, we need to use the calculation method. So we go into the calculators. And we have two major ways we can see the calculators. We have the pre-built AP42, just the complete, because it's a definitive source of emissions methods, and we have the user-defined. Now, if I want to show you, for example, a predefined method, I can go and I'm going to show you the nat gas So I just put this together this morning, so I'm just going to go ahead and show you what I did. So it's just going to come up on screen here. Okay, to the left, we can see that there's the natural gas for large wall-fired boilers. We can see that the expression is pretty simple. It's just EF times U, which is just the usage, and we can see that those variables are defined to the right, and we can see their unit, and so we can see by factor label that they would produce pound from the total millions of standard cubic feet of nat gas. Again, we also can have a description, the references of where it came from, and then as we scroll down a little further, we can see the emission factors. And these are the defaults from that chapter. As we will see in a little bit, when we run these calculations, we will be able to override them and change them as needed if we have a set of local parameters that update some of the compounds based on stack testing at the site. So now that we've kind of seen what one of these calculators look like, let's put one in action. So I'm going to run one, and so I'm just going to go ahead and execute a calculator, and I'm going to pick my facility. I'm going to click Next. We're getting a list. I'm going to use the fuel oil combustion calculator from AP42. I'm going to click Next, and if I don't want to change it, I just continue on. Here we get some description, some nice information as summarized from the documentation. We see all the references, all the methodology, what types of fuels it covers, so that's really nice. Helps us out. I'm going to go ahead and click Next while this pops up. We can see here for the annual, let me click on annual. We can see the types of units we're going to use, so we can use not only metric, but we can also use U.S. standard units. We can describe the boiler that we want to use, firing configuration, the fuel grade, the amount of fuel fired, the heat input for the oil. If we know the sulfur content or not, it will account for that in the calculation, and then when we go ahead and click Next, it'll do the calc. And so here we can see the result of the calculation, so we can see all the different compounds, so we can see arsenic, beryllium, and so on. We can see how much was calculated, and we can see the emission factors that we're rating, so we can see which ones we can trust the best, like the carbon monoxide, the carbon dioxide. Cadmiums are E's, but it's still quite helpful to have better than no calculation at all. Click Finish. And then when I'm done, I can just be done, and it'll update the model. So that's all we have to do as far as setting up a calculation. But now I would like to show, right before the end of this, what happens or what can you do on a year-by-year basis once you have done that. So once all of these configurations and emission units are in place, you can give out the questionnaire. And this can either be done by the agency in a portal operated by the agency, or it can be done by the facility, who can then do the adjustments and then the fill out as presented back to the agency that they report to. So here we can see that natural gas calculation that I did just by clicking here. We can scroll down, we can see the calculation method because that's what I have selected. We can see basically the data request, which is just the information we need to fill through. So really in our reality, we just need to change the throughput. So once you go year by year, you will only need to come and fill out this questionnaire and update those values. So let's say instead of 1,000, I want to do 2,000 cubic feet. And below we can also see the emission factors for this calculation. So we can see NOx, CO, VOC, methane, so forth. Now the ones that are shown in white, those are the defaults that we got from AP42. And here the one in blue, we can see that we changed that from its original default. If we want to go back to the default, we can click the restore, and it goes back like so. Once we are satisfied with the description and the data that we've put in, we can come up here, and if we want to get a quick calculation, calculate. So then we can see the different pages, and we can see all the periods. So we have annual, we also have individual months that we also calculate when we calculate. So we have February, March. So not only can we do an annual as required by a lot of reporting agencies, but if you need to do monthlies for, say, a sustainability, you can do so as well. And if I go back, page 7, we can see the Nox values. If I want to change the tonnage, for example, or the usage, I can change that back to, say, 1,000, and redo my calculation like so. And then it will update in real time. And here you can see that it changed the NOx number as appropriate. Okay, now that we've kind of built out our inventory, that's all you need to do to set up, perform your calculations, and then do the maintenance as needed on an annual basis or monthly basis if necessary. Some other things to note: you don't have to use a calculation method if you have a flat entry. Say you did a source test or you're doing another engineering balance type calculation, you can just flat enter those numbers into the system. I just want to move on to show you the map a little bit and some of the things you can do from the map, and just kind of skip some things to show what's happening. You'll note that it's at some zoom level. We have these numbers that show kind of the clustering. So this just says that there's like 184 points at this location. So if I zoom a little bit, we'll see that the numbers break up. We go from 79 down to say 4 and 14. This is just because at certain resolutions you can't see, but you want to have an idea of how many points you have. So you can see 4s, 5s, and so on. So if I highlight one of these, I can click on the details, and then it'll take me to that particular release point, and I can find out what facility is located. Again, I can see the map, and there we can see it at the on-site as it's located, and we can pretty well justify that it's right on top of this tank. So now, roll over, and I'd just like to show you some of the reports that can be done by the system and some of the capabilities that we have there. So if I run the webinar report here, just so that it's easy for us to see together, I can select all the pollutants, select all, and I can go to next, so that I've selected all my pollutants, and then I can choose the period. So I'm just going to choose an annual total here, so that's kind of nice. And then click Finish, and it'll just run my report. It pulls up from the database, and there we go. So that's kind of nice. We can page through page by page, so I can go from one page to the next. I can search for something. So for example, I can type in NOx, and I can click Find, and then it will take me to the different NOxes or different types of compounds, and I can click Next, and then it'll cycle me through. The other thing that's nice is I can export these. So I can export these to PDFs so that I can print them, Excel, TIFFs, and Word. I'm just going to show you quickly that if you export it to Excel, it takes pretty much almost no time, other than the Microsoft security scan. You can see the report and the data as it was presented and exported out to Excel. So when I enable editing, Microsoft, you can see that I have the actual data, and you can see that it's a real number. It's not text, so I can do summations, I can do filtering, I can do all kinds of fancy stuff with that. At this juncture, what I will do is I will hand the controls back to Dr. Tay and let him continue on with the discussion. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. You did a great job. You can contact Mr. Brian Matthews. Thank you very much from the bottom of our heart, and feel free to contact us. We're very honored that you chose to come and attend this webinar.